Hey guys, guess who can record 3DS games now? Anyways, Kirby Triple Deluxe is a fantastic game that I remember loving as a kid, and this replay reaffirmed my feelings for how good this game is, and its boss roster is no exception. While it is one of the smaller rosters in the series with only 11 unique foes, the quality cannot be denied. In fact, I would go so far as to say it's got the second best boss roster in the entire series, only being beaten out by Forgotten Land. And aside from one infamous exception, the bosses in this game are all at least pretty good. And today, we're going to be ranking its bosses from worst to best. Now, quick disclaimer, I will not include Shadow Kirby from the Kirby Fighter side mode because that runs off very different rules and it is heavily dependent on which ability you're using. And honestly, I'm just not really sure how I would factor that in with the rest of the roster. He's essentially a strong NPC battle in a game like Dark Souls. Either way, that's enough rambling, let's get on with it, shall we? I'm excited to get this one started. Number 11, Pyribbit. Unfortunately, for as strong of a boss roster as this game has, there is one horribly rotten exception to the rule, and that is Pyribbit. The other bosses in this game are fast-paced and have creative attacks while also being enjoyable challenges all around. Pyribbit attacks mostly just consist of spewing fire and bouncing around the arena, while also camping out in the background like a jackass, and there's many points where you have just a second to hit him, and there wasn't any real counterplay to anything he did other than just, well, dodging, because he would stay out of range while dropping explosive projectiles that left lingering flames, and God help you if you did this fight with no abilities. I get that the boss wanted to show off the 3D attacks, since the game was an early 3DS game, but unfortunately, this is the only boss where I felt they missed the mark, because every other boss left some chance to counterattack the boss when they were making use of the third dimension, but in Pyribbit's case, nothing. Plus, the fight just drags on. Most other bosses in this game last around 2 to 3 minutes, which is the ideal length for a boss fight in a more action-focused game. This boss, on the other hand, lasts for 5 to 6 minutes, with a lot of that time just being waiting for him to get back in the dang arena. For as strong as Triple Deluxe's boss roster is, this is the only one I consider to be an outright miss. Number 10, Paintra. For as bad as Pyribbit is, every other boss in this game is at the very least good, so from here on, it's more a case of which boss do I want to refight right now the least, and that would be Paintra. Make no mistake, I won't really be complaining for the rest of this video, it'll mostly be praise, and that's no exception here. Anyways, Paintra is a reference to Drasha, the final boss of Kirby Canvas Curse. Actually, it's one of Drasha's sisters, and unlike her sister Glacia, this one is very evil. Paintra's first phase is pretty simple, just throwing out paint and swiping at you with her brushes, but phase 2 has her fly into the background and break through the screen, paint over objects, and have some of them come to life as special attacks, cover the screen in paint, and set the canvas alight over a decade before Clear Obscure Expedition 33 made it cool. As the second boss of the game, she's here to show that the boss fights are going to keep on going hard, and I love the fact that it makes good use of the game's 3D slider if you have that turned on, because then you can tell which painting of hers is fake and which one is real. Number 9, Eternal Flower Sectonia. I should clarify real quick, there's 3 different Sectonia fights and I'm counting them all separately. But your final boss of the game is quite solid and visually very impressive. It's with this beautiful background of the moon and the sky, and Sectonia merging with the Dreamstalk that is currently swallowing up Dreamland. And the battle has you taking on her flowers using a variety of different attacks as you get closer and closer to the main body, and hoo boy, does this boss love her 3D attacks. I mean, heck, she spends the whole fight in the background. However, this is a fight that's kind of ruined for me because once you've beaten her enhanced version, this fight feels entirely too slow, which you could argue is the case for most Kirby bosses, but I would honestly say that isn't the case for this game in particular. In most fights, while they are definitely easier, they still remain fun and exciting, and for the majority of the time I wondered why, but I actually pieced it together why. It's because she only actually uses 2 flowers during a majority of the fight and only brings out the 4 flowers when she's in her very low HP, and that's the only point when the fight feels like it's at its best. Meanwhile, the enhanced her version uses the 4 flower attacks much earlier on. It's still not a bad fight, mind you, but it's not perfect. And I have to be honest, maybe an unpopular opinion, while I don't think the boss theme is bad, I'm not really that big a fan of this song. I think it's just kind of okay. The vocals would have benefited from being actual proper vocals in my opinion. But we do have the last phase, where Kirby is saved by DDD, free of his brainwashing, and Taranza, free of his burn to Sectonia. This is the obligatory tear into the boss with super ability phase that really got popularized back in Return to Dreamland and continued on from there. To be honest, I think this one is actually middle of the road for me. It's a gameplay segment, which is nicer than something like Robobot, where it was just basically one action, or Star Allies, where it was a final clash, which ironically also felt like Gurren Lagann as an homage. But I think I still prefer the super ability fight against Magalore, or crashing the Big Rig into Elphalus. But what really hurts this phase for me is the gyro controls. They worked great back when the game was new, but unfortunately my gyro controls are kind of foobarred at this point, which makes this phase downright unpleasant at points. It's not hard, but it can get really annoying. I try not to hold it against the boss too much, but it does drag down what should be a satisfying victory lap. Still, a great final boss, but I prefer the other two Sectonia fights over it by a considerable margin. Number 8, Flowery Woods. What is it with me going from the final boss to the first boss in my rankings recently? First Pragmata, now this game. Anyways, being the first boss in a 2D Kirby game, it was more or less a given it'd be Wispy or a Wispy clone, and of his many iterations, this actually might be my second favorite, only being beaten out by Robobot's iteration. Third favorite if you include biblically accurate Wispy in Return to Dreamland's remake, but, well, I'll talk about that game at some point when I get to it. But what really sells this fight for me is Phase 2. As the island's raised in the background, he goes there to start attacking you from the third dimension, and it just looks amazing. The pollen attack and the flower attack require a bit of dodging, but just as long as, well, they don't drag the fight out. Meanwhile, his vines are a much longer attack that not only does it look cool, but they can also be attacked to do damage against the boss, so they're not pace breakers like Pyribbit's lava summoning. And I have to take a moment to praise the amazing boss music. It's a fairly simple tune all things considered, but I just associate some Kirby boss themes with a fun time, except Robobot's boss theme, that one's really somber, and I think out of the lot of generic boss themes in the series, this one might be my favorite, definitely in the top 3. Number 7, Shadow DDD. I was debating if I should separate the DDD fights, but they are different characters and they do have different attacks, especially in their second phases. With that being said, Phase 1 is basically your standard King DDD fight, but a bit faster, and he also has considerably less health. But once he drops to half health, he says to hell with his hammer, and he conjures out a halberd that will be imbued with dark magic, and he'll combo like crazy, but also reveals his stomach was a demon mouth and unleashes the dark powers upon you. It's a fun fight, but this evil imitation doesn't hit the same as the regal ruler of Dreamland, and he's far more fragile than the original product despite being, in the game's hard mode, so to speak. Number 6, Kracko. It's okay guys, I spelled his name right this time. People say Wispy or DDD are Kirby's main rival, but no, those are more or less his buddies that he has tussles with. Kracko hates Kirby, and these two are on site with their conflicts, and this fight was a big deal because it was his big debut in 3D. He's got different attacks from all across the series, as well as the machine designed explicitly to kill Squidward is a new addition to his arsenal, along with him overtaking either the foreground or the background to create a storm that is undodgeable if you don't change the plane you're on. His fight's a lot of fun, it's fast-paced, makes good use of the 3D, and it provides a solid challenge that is a significant step up from Paintra and Flowery Woods. And I'm glad he made a comeback here. Now, here's hoping he returns in whatever game they have as the sequel to Forgotten Land, because he is the ultimate Kirby hater, and it's always fun to see him show up because there's gonna be some bullshit up his sleeve. Number 5, Soul of Sectonia. The true final battle at the very end of the game and the last challenge for the player, Sectonia's withering corpse devours 4 Hypernova fruit to revitalize herself, turning into the Soul of Sectonia, a powered-up version of the Eternal Flower with far, far more complex attacks, and it's a ton of fun, with there being more to keep track of. and the lore in this boss is something else. Usually it's some sort of tale about how the individual fell to darkness because Kirby games and Dark Souls games are secretly the same thing, and if this video gets 3,000 views, I'll make a video on why I stand by that statement. But unlike most lore texts, Sectonia's is actually told from the first-person perspective. It's her final thoughts as she's more or less drifting through limbo, no longer remembering who she once was. She remembers a voice that used to call out to her as if trying to save her, that being Tyranza, but it's long since gone silent, as well as after her tossing him aside, he gave up on trying to save his long-dead loved one. But the other shakeup is the soul phase. After her health goes down, she pulls what's left of her original body out of the Eternal Flower, now as the disembodied torso with wings coming out of her back. She flies very quickly from the background and moves at a breakneck pace, seemingly overwhelming and terrifying, and she has a fair number of attacks like her thorns from Phase 1, the cutter blades from Marks, sky lasers from Magnetlore, and Drasha's artistic attacks. But if you actually keep a cool head, this fight is actually pretty easy. Now, you'll likely die from being initially overwhelmed, but once you know the fight is coming, it's not that hard. In fact, many of her attacks have generous hitboxes, shall we say, that are extremely skewed in your favor, because, well, most of their attacks are actually forming in the background until they reach the platforms themselves. It's still a fun final battle, and the twist of the true final boss having an original last phase is really cool. Plus, if you really want to get philosophical, then throughout the entire final fight, she's staring at the sunset behind you while you're focused on the night sky throughout the battle. Whether it's simply a pretty arena created by HAL Laboratories or symbolism of Sectonia's life coming to an end, I'll leave for you to decide. You think I could convince the Video to make a prepare to cry video for a Kirby game? Number 4. Dark Meta Knight. You know, I still need to make a boss ranking for Kirby in the Amazing Mirror at some point, so I'll save some of my prepared jokes on that fight for whenever I cover that game. Anyways, Dark Meta Knight is the obligatory tough knight battle at the end of the games, and personally, I think he's actually tougher than any of the Galactonite battles. Maybe even tougher than Forgotten Land's last knight fights. But anyways, Phase 1 is just there to ease you into things, while Phase 2 reveals that he'd already used his domain expansion upon you, trapping you in the mirror world with him. He'll summon massive swords from the ground, fly from both the background and foreground, spawn multiple tornadoes, and create mirror clones that nearly perfectly mimic his actions, but these clones aren't alive and only perform the most rudimentary of movements. Meanwhile, much like the proper Meta Knight, this man is a powerhouse and a bit of a show-off. It's a challenging battle, and one that proves Tyranza didn't make a mistake. Dedede was the true hero that would slay the darkness. Unfortunately, Sectonia was too far gone by the time we got there. All we can do is slay this evil and make sure it can never hurt anyone ever again. And that's just what Dedede does by pulling a God of War 2, trapping his foe in the mirror before shattering it, erasing them from reality forever. Or at least until Star Allies. Number 3. Coily Rattler. After all these big story fights, it might be surprising to see a standard world boss is still left to rank, but I have my reasons. Yes is a super fun boss that makes great use of the game's 3D and provides another nice step up in challenge after Krakow, while having this really awesome looking almost Aztec aesthetic going on. But this was the boss that convinced me to get this game when I was a kid. I remember seeing all the bosses, well, in All Bosses video for Yoshi's New Island, figuring it was going to be a remake of the Super Nintendo original, but after I saw it, I thought, wow, this looks like crap. So I was kind of bummed out, but then shortly after I saw an All Bosses video for Kirby Triple Deluxe recommended to me, and the early fights looked pretty cool, but then there was this guy rolling around the arena, snaking through the pillars and attacking from the background, and that made me desperately want to get this game because this fight looked awesome. I remember then, May 3rd rolled around, and the game was released in the West. And I guess I was doing well in school at the time because I managed to convince my dad to take me to GameStop, where they happened to have 2 copies of the game left, so I happily picked this one up. And it was one of the first games I ever got 100% in, and a large part of that is thanks to this boss that made me decide to get this game. And yeah, also, the boss fight's really freaking fun. Number 2, Mask Dedede. If Coily Rattler was the boss that convinced me to buy the game, then Mask Dedede returning was what made me fanboy. Phase 1 is really cool. It's a good homage to his battle from Superstar Ultra, and I still need to make a Superstar Ultra boss ranking. All of his hammer attacks are from before, they've returned, but something's off, and that's his music. Don't get me wrong, the song isn't bad, but the boss rematch theme isn't the same as Mass D. So it feels like something's missing from this fight. But I guess D figured that as well, because thankfully his Penguiny Majesty has a second health bar up his sleeve where the mask cracks but his awesome boss music kicks in, but instead of donning a hammer, he takes one of the halberds off the wall while destroying the remaining halberds, and now he's performing much longer combos before weaving in and out of the background and foreground, creating energy blasts and performing impossible physics by flying through the air until you remember it's Taranza pulling the strings. And as an added bonus, his energy sphere attack is a combo between the two, with Taranza passing the balls while you're the target. It's an excellent fight with awesome music, and it provides a very fun obligatory confrontation with the Majestic Monarch, and it would take another royal to truly usurp his throne. And that very royal would be the number one of this ranking, number 1, Queen Sectonia, the main antagonist of Kirby's Return to Dreamland, and despite her many forms, I find her Queen Bee form that you first battle her in to be far and away my favorite of the bunch. This battle is a dance to the death, with her not only being a powerful mage, but also a master swordswoman, being able to attack at quick speeds with multiple different combos available, and her music is intimidating to fit how dangerous she is with the organ playing in the background. Then she sends you to her crystal realm where you now battle her in the skies above. She has some minions assist her and opts to be a caster more in this phase, but really her minions are just there for fodder. They're not immune to her own attacks. It's really a good shakeup, and the limited footing makes her phase 1 attacks a lot more dangerous, but it also makes phase 1 a great training tool for new players. This is good design. Also, the minions provide an opportunity for more copy abilities should you need them. Phase 3 then has her destroy the crystals before using both magical discus to attack you, as well as moving at such fast speed she starts creating after images. And while I have briefly mentioned it, I adore this boss theme, being a piece that starts slow and menacing on the organ before the guitars kick in to add to the intensity, and if you're playing optimally, the music syncs up with the phase changes, and it's at its best when you reach phase 3 and everything goes batshit insane. This fight is excellent, the enhanced version is excellent, it's one of the best Kirby bosses ever made, and that's saying something considering it has multiple contenders for some of the best all-time bosses. While I don't think Sectonia is as strong of a villain as Magalore or Haltman narratively, there's no denying that she stands out for her boss fight, opting to not waste too much time on needless magic tricks and light shows, and instead opts for the masterful swordsmanship and dominates the arena. As she says herself, true beauty is control, and she commands the number 1 spot as the best boss in Kirby Triple Deluxe. And that's going to do it for this video, guys. As you can see, I've gotten my new recording set up, so I can now record games from far more systems than just my PC and Nintendo Switch, which means the options available have expanded significantly, and I plan on making every use of it. Now, there probably will be a few kinks in there, and for that I apologize, but I hope you enjoyed the video nonetheless. And if you'd like to see more content of varying quality, consider liking and subscribing, hyping the video. Now, I'm going to give you guys a heads up. I have some good news. I actually just got approved for a new apartment, so I will be getting my own place fairly soon. However, that also means that there will probably be a little bit of a gap in between videos and about the time we get to June. I'm going to try and schedule some stuff out so it doesn't really act too serious of a gap, but just a heads up in case that does happen. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video and want to see more content like it, consider liking, subscribing, and hyping the video. I'll see you all next time.